All right, what is up, Utah fans? This is Joseph back with the Utah Utes Football Digest, and today we are talking about Utah versus Cal Poly. Let's be real, guys. Utah versus Cal Poly. This is an FCS team. We're expecting not just a win, but a dominant win. That's what you're looking for when you play an FCS team. Just to give you guys some perspective here. Think about that 2021 year. I believe that was the year where we had Charlie Brewer at the helm to start the year. In that season, we play Weber State to open up, right? It wasn't like we were ever at risk of losing the game, but if you go back and watch that game, it was like mid third quarter and it was still a somewhat competitive game. Like Weber State was still in it. I think when you play FCS teams, that's just not what you want to see, right? So what you're looking for is a strong win, right? It's like maybe 20 points minimum sort of deal, but you also want that win to kind of be established somewhat early in the game. And this is my thoughts. I'm not saying that's what everyone looks for from these games, but this is my thought because the FCS game against Weber State that year with Charlie Brewer at the helm originally foreshadowed some serious problems with the team. Not that Charlie Brewer himself had a terrible game, but it started to foreshadow, okay, why are we so close against a team that we should have so much more talent than? And I think that's kind of what you're looking at here is, hey, if we have a big talent advantage over someone, can we dominate them, right? And that's kind of what you're looking for. Hopefully, you can find a bunch of 40 plus point wins over the past couple weeks or the past week or so where teams played FCS teams. Think BYU, I mean, I don't know them off the top of my head. I think Texas Tech might have had one. There was a lot of dominant wins, right? That's kind of what you're looking for, at least like a good 20-point comfy victory. And ideally, by the time you're in the mid third quarter, the game is well out of reach for the FCS team. So that's kind of that. Some stuff has happened since we last met, and obviously this won't be as analytical as usual because we're still early in the year and we're playing an FCS team, so there's not too much to talk about there. I will talk about some of my thoughts on what I'd like to see that we might not have seen last week, but I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the top 25 rankings, kind of where my mind is about that, how I feel about that. And we'll talk about some of the PFF grades from last week. Now they've come out. Now that we've gotten some other people's perspective and kind of, after reflecting, where are we mentally right now? Where am I mentally right now as we head into, the final, get the ball rolling. We're out of conference play. We're getting the ball rolling here. So let's go ahead and dive in. And let's start by talking about the top 25 ranking for Utah. Okay, guys, talking about our top 25 ranking, I think it's awesome that we were able to make it into the top 25. Utah came in after last week at exactly number 25. Now, I think there's a lot of good to that. I also think there's some, annoyance about that. Just being real with you guys, I think there's a few teams that clearly stand out to me that I just don't see why Utah is not ranked higher than them. And I'm going to kind of walk through that with you guys. A couple that stand out right away, SMU. So let's go ahead and pull up SMU's last game, right? So heading into last week, SMU was ranked number 16. Don't know exactly why. And I think early in the year, your ranking heading into the year does not matter that much. And how you play on the field should matter, basically above all else. And so what SMU had was a game against East Texas A&M, and they won 42-13. And I want to point this out, guys. So Utah was able to beat UCLA at UCLA 43-10. And SMU beat an FCS team 42-13. So Utah was able to go up, and we discussed this last week. UCLA was not a walk in the park. We'll see what UCLA is before the season's over, and I think we dominated them and exposed them a little more than I expected us to. But the fact that we went in there at their house and beat the crap out of them, worse than SMU beat up an FCS team, and SMU is ranked significantly higher than us. I don't like that. I mean, that's dumb to me, right? We're talking Utah's 25 and SMU's 17. That's a pretty big gap. And I would feel confident based on what I saw that I think on a neutral field, and this is how I always look at this, is on a neutral field. And that's not exactly how you look at it as you get deeper into the year, because a lot of it is about resume and performance. But early in the season, that is how you should look at it, is on a neutral field, who's going to win the game. Once we get a bigger sample size, we start getting a resume built, things change. But early in the year, that's how I look at it. And SMU, I don't see them beating us. I mean, I just gave you guys the numbers right there. I'm going to give you guys another one here. And this might upset some Big 12 fans just a little bit. Okay. It's going to be Iowa State. So Iowa State had a huge win against South Dakota, right? Big win. Um, but outside of that, right? Outside of the big win against South Dakota, what has Iowa State done this year? And let's pull it up. Boom. Okay. This is where I think it matters, right? So on August 24th, they played Kansas State. So they have one big win against an FCS team, and then they played Kansas State. Okay. And Kansas State, let me pull their record up. They did beat Kansas State, but they barely beat them. And they beat them 24-21. This is Iowa State, who is ranked well above us. Okay. They're ranked number 16. So they're ranked quite a bit above us, almost a full 10 spots. So Kansas State, again, Iowa State beat them 24-21. Their only other game is against North Dakota, another team that's not, FBS. And they beat North Dakota 38-35. So they almost lost to a non-FBS team. And then Iowa State barely beats them. I don't see how you have Iowa State ranked above us. Someone tell me otherwise. Someone tell me I'm crazy about that. I've seen nobody act like that's ridiculous, and I think it is extremely ridiculous. I based on what we have seen so far, that tells me clearly Utah's a better team. Like you've got a team in Kansas State. It's your only matchup for Iowa State that really means anything. And Kansas State almost got beat by a non-FBS team, and you barely beat them. Right? To me, that that says something. Some other ones. I mean, those are the egregious ones that stand out. There's a few other ones you guys can comment in the chat, I'm sure. I'm trying to think. I know there was a couple. I think one team that's not in the top 25 that probably should be is TCU. If you're a Big 12 fan watching this, I do think that's a Big 12 team that probably deserves to be in the top 25 after a dominant win against North Carolina. So you guys can go ahead and look through the top 25, but I think Utah was shown some disrespect here, and I think we will continue to rise in the top 25. We do well playing the underdog, but I do think such a dominant performance from Utah against a very talented team in UCLA should be rewarded, and I'm surprised it was not rewarded more. I mean, you just look at those two examples I just gave you, and I think it's legitimately crazy that Utah is not ranked higher than SMU and Iowa State, and both those teams are nearly 10 spots higher than Utah. All right, but that's my thoughts on our top 25. We're ranked number 25. Good to be in the top 25, but we should be significantly higher. And there's other teams I could point out that we should be higher than as well. I know I had some written down the other day. I think Arizona State might be one. Let me look it up real quick. Let me see. Yeah, Arizona State. Their only game so far is Northern Arizona, at which Northern Arizona, again, at NAU, is a non-FBS school. And Arizona State beat them 38-19. Now, that's still a solid win, but a non-FBS school, and you beat them by a significantly smaller margin than we beat the 26th most talented roster in college football. I think that says something. I don't understand why they are ranked so much higher than us. Now, again, things will shake out as the season keeps going, but I do think some of this just needs to be said, and Utah should have a higher ranking. So you guys are probably going to comment that I'm negative or overly optimistic based on that, but I would love to hear what you guys are thinking around the top 25 ranking, because I do think it's a little crazy how many teams are ranked above us that I don't feel should be. So that's that. Let's go ahead and move on to giving some players some shout outs for some great performances last week. Okay, and the first player I'm going to give a big shout out to that I did touch on it after the UCLA game, but I feel like the numbers really showed in his favor, is John Henry Daly. So you take a look at this guy. He had 7 pressures last week against UCLA, which is really high. But more than that, guys, he was tied for the number 3 spot in total pressures for the entire week. But then you take it another step. John Henry Daly also had the pass rush percentage. What is this? I forget what it's called. PRP. Okay, so this combines all the times that you get back there, sacks, hurries, hits, and PRP. And for guys in his snap range, so that had at least, 20 or so snaps, John Henry Daly was clearly at the top. Like no one else at his range was really all that close. The closest guy, I mean, John Henry Daly had a 20%, and the next guy that's in his minimum snap range is an 18.2. So if we actually take it and do it for only players that had at least 20 pass rush snaps, John Henry Daly is the number one. So for players that had at least 20 pass rush snaps, John Henry Daly is the number one PRP, which is just how often are you winning against your opponent. So 20% of the time he was getting a hit, a hurry, or a sack, which is pretty wild. He had a win rate of 36.4%. Huge shout out to that guy. Very impressed. Again, it's against one player really in UCLA. So let's see how he does in the coming weeks. But I do expect at least a good season from John Henry Daly with high optimism as we head into the next week. Okay, guys, one other player that everyone has been talking about all week is obviously Devin Dampier. Now, I think we all knew when we left that game that Devin Dampier had a really, really good game. But more than that, I mean, since that game, the Heisman hype around Devin Dampier has really started to build. I've even seen him ranked as high as the number 3 most likely player to win the Heisman in the betting odds. Again, not most places, but I have seen that. Um, I want to give you guys a quick number from Devin Dampier. So looking only at quarterbacks that had at least 25 dropbacks, so, at least a decent little sample size. And some of these guys are playing FCS teams, some are playing FBS, that sort of thing. But at least 25 dropbacks. We've got, nearly 200 quarterbacks that would fit in this range. And Devin Dampier, for completion percentage for quarterbacks with at least 25 dropbacks, had an 80.8 completion percentage, 4th highest among all quarterbacks last week with 25 dropbacks. So clearly, Devin Dampier had quite a game. I'm excited to see him follow it up. Again, we're still early in the year. Anyone that's having one crazy game doesn't really mean a ton yet, but it does get you very optimistic. And I can tell you, my optimism for the season is very, very high right now. And I can't wait to see what we do here. Now talking a little bit about Utah versus Cal Poly, I think the number one thing you're going to want to see Utah versus Cal Poly is just a little more of getting the receivers involved. And why do I say that? So in the Utah versus UCLA game, we did get Smith Snowden involved. Just a quick touch on that. Smith Snowden looked awesome. He came out with a really high receiving grade, looked very good. And I really hope we continue to use him in the coming, weeks and months. I loved us getting the defensive players involved on offense. I really see a world where that is the future of college football. But let's talk a little bit about our receivers. So you actually look at the receivers. So like how many? Why is it not showing receiving? Okay, here we go. So actual receivers that caught passes, I mean, it was really not a ton. Ryan Davis was kind of our guy. Buchanan, I think he's a tight end. I mean, you look outside of him, I don't think any wide receiver actually caught more than one pass outside of um, Ryan Davis. Yeah, he had 3, but I think outside of that, it's all tight ends. Dallin Bentley had 5. That was awesome to see him get very involved. JJ Buchanan had 3, so good to see the tight ends involved. But you look at the receivers, Merriweather 1, Jackson Benet 1, Smith Snowden 6, so he was pretty much playing receiver. But I would like to see the actual receivers get a little more involved in the game. I think that'd be good to see. So hopefully, as we head into this coming week, we do see that. Cal Poly, it should be a dominant win. It should be a game where we, leave with a 30+ point lead, hopefully. And it gives you guys something to celebrate out there. I'm in the Philippines, but I hope you guys show up to the game and have a great time. I'm actually going to be going to Hong Kong this coming week. I'm pretty excited about that. Going to go to Disney with the kids. That should be fun. So excited for that. But yeah, I think we got a fun game ahead of us. Hopefully a dominant win. Hopefully we can see some something shake out with who's going to be that third or fourth running back who's kind of establishing themselves as the potential people to take that role. And honestly, I really do hope we can see the receivers get a little more involved. Just one thing to always note when we're talking about wide receivers is if you want good receivers to come to your school, the receivers that are there have to be a part of the passing game. And I say that, I mean, we have such a great history of breeding tight ends and taking receivers that are, not highly sought after and turning them into good players. But, keeping a healthy, good 4-star recruiting pipeline of receivers is pretty important. So I'd like to see that. And I'd like to see us just a little more well-rounded on where we're spreading the ball out on offense. I guess we'll see what happens this coming week. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts as well. Please make sure you guys smash that like button. Also, comment down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'm going to get out of here. Go Utes.